agenda, no takes, and no rules. Social Sessions with Mike Gannotti. All right, let's get out of that share there. And I want to welcome everybody to Social Sessions. This is our inaugural social session. I'm very excited. We have two fantastic individuals today. We have Katie Coriell and longtime friend of mine, Fabian Williams, the man. And we have some very interesting things that we're going to talk about today. But as you all know, right now we're in the middle of this whole pandemic kind of thing. So first, before we jump into anything, what have you been up to? How are you handling this? You and, family, friends. Katie, you want to share first? How are you handling this?
I've been doing so outside of work and community projects with Fabian. No, it's been doing a lot of DIY, and I moved into a new apartment February 17th. Moved cities.
In the middle of this.
Oh, yes. It was one of those that it actually been in the works for about a year, and I was waiting for kind of the right opportunity, right apartment, and all of that. And that got ironed out over Christmas and New Year's. And so then, moved to New York City from DC on February 17th. And I left for a road trip in far north, Norway, Sweden, and Finland on February 21st. And I came back March 1st to a whole different world.
So I'm going to ask you more about that road trip in a bit, because there's some interesting little tidbits there, I believe.
Yeah.
But Fabian, what about yourself? How have you been doing? How's your family doing?
Thanks for asking, Mike. Family's doing well. Homeschooling two little young ones. One's in kindergarten and one's in seventh grade. The seventh grade one is basically self-managed. But the little kindergarten, just getting used to school, and then all of a sudden, that's presenting a challenge. It's hard to maintain our focus. Got to retrain myself. But I'm used to working from home, so this is, this was something that I had a normal cadence around. But I'm not used to doing it with two young kids. I'm hungry. Yeah. I'm stuck. I'm this. I'm that. So that's an added layer that I wasn't prepared for. But other than that, the work stuff. Because I can't tell weekend from weekdays now, we just mix it up, and on the weekends we just drive around without getting out of the vehicle just to get out of the house. And we have a bird, a little nesting bird area outside, so we can watch birds, and that's probably it. Just try to mix it a little bit. And I did start a 750 count puzzle over the weekend. Again, just trying to do different activities.
I saw you had that posted out. I was like, oh, you're a brave man.
I know.
Teaching your kids strategies, I saw.
Yeah.
Start doing That's pretty cool. So real quickly, before we get into the solution and stuff that you wanted to show, from both of your aspects, both have pretty interesting careers and paths to where you got to. So, again, we'll do ladies first. And Katie, so tell us, what is it that you're doing today, and kind of what brought you to that point?
So right now I work for a accounting practice management software company.
Okay.
And I'm a Power BI developer designer, which is that it's wearing a ton of hats, and it's always every time I get asked this, I'm always just kind of like, well, I do a lot of things. And it's hard to qualify it, but my joke sort of my elevator pitch, which is honestly, it's on my resume, it's on my website. It's the best way I can sort of describe it is that I'm 50% data science. I'm probably 15% designer, 15% educator, trainer, and the rest of it's magic.
So 20% magic.
They put the magic in. So quick question on that then. If that's what you're doing data science, what's your degree in?
So let's just say I have ADHD diagnosed, so this will make a lot more sense. So I actually started my undergrad as in the honors chem program at Syracuse and then Maryland, and I was taking Chinese language and history classes as my electives.
Wow.
I was, of the 75 people, 74 wanted to go to med school. One of us didn't, so you can probably guess who that one was.
Yeah.
So halfway through, I was just done. I was done with, like, it was so competitive. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I was like, well, I guess I'll just get a history degree and continue taking Chinese.
Okay.
So that's what I did.
Yeah.
And then I moved to New York City during, like, right as, like, financial crash happening, worked for a hedge fund, then got laid off, went back home to Kansas and started grad school. And I actually thought that I wanted to do architecture school,
Nice.
but I had to get recurrent in calculus and physics. And it had been 3-4 years since I'd had those, and I was struggling. And to, like, put off my student loans, I took archaeology. And
that's the typical career path.
Yeah, exactly.
yes. So my master's is in since it's US based, my master's is in anthropology, but I focused on archaeology and GIS, so geographic information systems and mapping.
Okay, so that's a good lead in. That's better than mine. My degree's elementary ed, so if you want me to do sock puppets and hello, how are you? You know, I mean, I can rock the house, but
so for my master's, I interned with AccuWeather on their enterprise side, and in the analytics department doing GIS. And my boss there asked me and, like, my full-time, like, equivalent for us to learn just a number of business intelligence software. And so and Power BI was one of them, and I loved it. And so that was October of 2016. So I've been with Power BI, working with it for most of it.
Yeah.
And so, she transitioned me to, like, just doing that. And I mean, Microsoft with AccuWeather, and my boss, like, presented my work at Ignite in, I think, in 2017. So that kind of, and then I went to Witham, and then I went to Practice Engine, my current company, and I'm still fighting for people to love design, and if reports are pretty, people are more likely to use them.
That's right. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Fabian.
Yeah, mine's a lot simpler.
You're like me. You've been around since dirt. So what? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
All right. So I'll just do the highlights then, since I've been around since dirt. But just like you, I'm former military, except, you know, I'm from the real side of the military. I'm from the Marine Corps. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know, but
why, buddy?
I know. Thank you, sir. So once I got out, I started to do support desk and transitioned into LAN administrator. So I was more of a systems engineer. Then I got bit by the bug of working with databases. I love databases, so I became a DBA. And then once I was able to understand networking and databases, you know what? Let's try this programming stuff. And that's when I actually did go to school for programming. So CIS degrees. And since then, when working with SharePoint, after working with BizTalk Server and a couple other stuff, and stuck with SharePoint since SharePoint 2003, up until it started to split into on-premises and cloud. Decided I didn't want to do anything JavaScript, so just stuck with writing C# code, and then did mobile, which brought me to Xamarin World. And then from then, got the bug of AI and ML, and said, okay, let's pivot over now to Azure Functions and AI and ML, which leads me here. And professionally, I lead a practice for the intelligent process automation for Witham, which Katie and I used to, Katie used to work, I still work at. And my community work takes me down the ML AI space, and my professional work is all about IPA, which is the cross section of ML/AI with process automation.
Nice.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, both of you are world travelers, and that kind of brings us to a little bit of a segue into this solution that you're going to want to talk about. So, Fabian, on the solution, what's the name of the solution that you guys wanted to share today?
Sure. So Katie and I brainstormed and worked on a solution. The title is COVID-19 Sentiment Analysis. And what we're basically doing, it started from a conversation that Bill Bear and Chris Gibbons, two friends of mine, worked Microsoft once an MVP, had around, how things are going to look post COVID-19, how are employers going to look at it, how are people going to react to it, adjusting from this work from home, shelter in place kind of lifestyle.
Sure.
And I know I could code a solution. So that was a no-brainer. And I said, you know what about the visualization part? I can learn to do Power BI, but is that the right way to do it? So I called Katie. I said, Katie, here's my idea. What do you think about it? And she said, and it sat with me. She said, I can probably do this faster than you can learn it. And that proves so much to be true. And she's done such an amazing job at it. It's beyond what I even thought it could be. And I'm like so enamored and in awe in terms of what she delivered. But that's how we came to working on this solution and what we have right now.
So, Katie, because this was just too interesting to leave out. So leading up to doing this solution with Fabian, right? You had your own little short brush that brought you to like a firsthand experience of all the craziness of COVID. So if you could, in like a minute or two at the most, or less, and just kind of highlight what brought you. I understand there might be something about reindeer and snowmobiles, but how did you get to that point where you were working with him on this?
So as I mentioned, moved to New York City, February 17th. I left for northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland, February.
Arctic Circle?
Oh, yeah, Lofoten, Kiruna, way north, Tromsø, Norway, that area. And with some friends on February 21st to road trip. We've started doing essentially Arctic road trips every February. Got to find snow somewhere. And with my educational background, I've always loved the Sami culture. And so we definitely spent some time with reindeer.
Did they have masks, the reindeer? That's what I need to know. No gloves, no masks.
No masks. And if you look at social media, there's lots of photos. But yeah, we didn't really look at social media news, nothing while we were there. And so it was February 29th, and we were in Finland going on a snowmobile tour to where Finland, Norway, and Sweden meet, where their borders meet.
Yeah.
And so as we're on that and we're sitting there and I'm flying my drone and doing all that, our tour guide told us about Finland having their first reported case that day. Yeah. And we were just we're like, oh, okay. We're so far north. But it was also I did take my computer on the trip on the off chance. I felt like if I lug this thing around, I'm not going to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And if I do take it, I won't be quarantined. So I wasn't. But yeah, we came back March 1st to a totally different world.
Yeah.
And
so you got back, and then you needed to go in, and you actually were tested then for COVID.
Yeah. It did take a few weeks. I've been in lockdown since March 14th. Pretty strict lockdown. And part of that's due to I am a higher risk person. I do immunotherapy treatment for Hodgkin's at Johns Hopkins. So I'm also lucky that I have Hopkins behind me. And they're leaders on this, on COVID. And yeah, and so Fabian and I had started working on this, but a week and a half ago, I went down to Hopkins for my treatment and ended up having a mild fever, 99.6, no other symptoms. And because I was coming from New York City, or because I'd been in New York City, New Jersey, or Connecticut in 14 days, I like everything shut down, and hazmat, like nurses in hazmat suits came to like collect me. The amount of like lockdown. So yeah, so then I got
had
tested.
great visuals.
Yeah.
If you go to my Instagram and under my highlights, I documented my whole like experience, also including like getting tested.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I got tested and it was not fun, but it wasn't awful. There's video. And I did like mostly know my nurses, so they indulged me on
Sure.
like recording all this. And so yeah, I had to wait like 4 hours, and in that time found out I couldn't have treatment that day. So they sent me home. Actually, they were like, can you stay overnight? And I was like, well, my best friends are doctors, so I don't think that's like if I'm potentially. And so they were like, oh yeah. I was like, you know what? I'm from Kansas. I'm used to driving. I'll just drive back to New York City. And so then they had to figure out how to get me from second floor to the first level of the basement, which is the parking garage.
Without possibly exposing others, right?
Yep. And so that took some strategizing. And so finally, like, I was able to like get to my car. My temp was back to normal within 2 hours. Still no symptoms. But yeah, so it was.
So that all kind of plays into when we start talking about visualizing and sentiment analysis. So tell me about this solution, and what is there something you want to show us? But
yes, I'll jump in by framing, I guess, the vision, and because a lot of this is so visual, if Katie'd like to share, her screen, we can pivot over to that. But ideally, we wanted to get feedback from people, without like trawling Twitter and trying to figure out what people are doing. We wanted to ask pointed questions, and we had like 3 close-ended questions, yes or no, and we had a few long-handed, and Kate, this is screen, it's a few long-handed questions as well. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we wanted to take the long-handed questions and put that through sentiment analysis, just to see what people are doing. And we're using Microsoft technologies for this, so we're using Azure Cognitive Services to do that. And we built the site in ASP.NET Core, and we're using Azure Functions for a lot of the middleware piece of it. And of course, this all gets you to what you're seeing on the screen right now, which is basically the end result of a lot of computation in Azure Functions. The information captured from the people inside the survey, and it's the beautiful work of Katie here in terms of her visual, which I can just pivot over to her now, because this speaks volumes in terms of what we're able to get out of 8 questions from an individual.
Wow. So from 8 questions, you're, again, just at a high level, you're taking that data, pulling it in, using the Azure Cognitive Services to actually kind of analyze the responses. Yep. And then you're visualizing it all with Power BI.
Yep, exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, and so it was, I will say we sort of joke, kind of joke, not really. This is proof of concept version 2. We did actually have a version 1 that was with, we did do streaming technology into Power BI, and there were so many limitations. So this is
that's V1.
Yeah.
So is this like point in time then that you're pulling?
Yeah, so initially, my thought was just to make sure that as soon as somebody submitted a survey, that they were able to see their own results back. So obviously, it needed to get from them into the data store through analytics, and then back into Power BI. So we were using Stream Analytics and using the Azure Event Hub in order to facilitate that. But as Katie can explain, it's a lot better than I can. But there was a difference between Power BI service, which is the only way that we knew at the time to stream, data in, versus in Power BI desktop, where there's more power, but you can't get the stream connection. So that
led to that V2, the one that we're looking at now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was just Power BI. Like, I love Power BI, and I do a lot of development and design and also training for it. And Microsoft has done a great job with it, but there's still some of the confusion around, if you have any familiarity with Power BI, is that there's Power BI Desktop, which is the free version. Then there's Power BI Service, which is online. And at least so far, sort of best practices, you design and create in desktop, you push to service so that it can be collaborated on and shared. But with streaming, I think it might be slightly different for premium, and I think it is. But if you are just a pro user, then streaming, you have to do all creation in the service, and there's various things you can't do. And so we started with the streaming, and finally kind of I could see like what you're seeing now. It was in my head, and I couldn't get there with just streaming. And so I was like, hey, and there was also a cost issue that I'll let Fabian talk about in a bit, but I was like, let me just design a desktop and we'll push it and we'll do scheduled refresh, and it will be like near real time, but not fully real time. And that allowed, like, from our survey and just those quick questions, being able to look at it a lot more, and being able to easily visualize that of the, so far the people who've taken our survey, you can see a third of them who are unemployed due to COVID-19.
Right.
And how anxious people are. And for at least for the people that are taking what percentages that's unemployed, and really sorry.
Coming in for a landing.
I know.
I'm not in the normal flight path for LaGuardia, but I'm in their secondary one. And so every once in a while,
It's all good.
Yeah.
And my window was open. So sorry. But yeah, so wanted to be able to look at things like this. It also allowed for me to design this so that if you're on this candy colored rainbow, and I will say that I was having color and color theory it's important, but it's not always the easiest. So one of Fabian and I's old coworkers, Adam Kruger, actually helped me. We developed the color scheme together. Gotcha. And were essentially inspired by Disney Pixar's Inside Out, and realizing this is we're looking at emotion, we're looking at feelings. And so I felt good about being able to use a bit more color in talking about something that's so heavy, versus, since we're not we're looking at emotions and feelings versus looking at
mortality rates and
right. Instead of just raw data, this is more around, and I think that's where that cognitive analysis comes in, right? So instead of just doing feeds of numerical data, we're actually taking sentiment around emotion, right? How people emote, and then pushing that out. Beautiful. So we even have a
word cloud.
Tag cloud. Yeah.
Yeah. Because what I wanted to get to here are some of the things that are, on TV and in the news, are inundated with, infection rate, mortality rates, hospitalization. And, there's people that are tied to this. All right. And people are going through their own those struggles, and mental health and emotional. And I wanted to find a way to basically show that. And the only way is to ask people pointed questions, and have them just talk about it, and then using sentiment analysis to figure out where are they coming from with that. Or, is it something, on the anxiety side, something, where people are okay, and just measuring that. So, different ways in terms of visualization.
So from if we think about a practical application standpoint of this, right, where you would see this being this type of a report, folks wanting to instantiate and then use to drive decision making and things, where do you see this playing in the space around things
today? And I'll give you mine, and of course, Katie will certainly have her thoughts on as well.
Yeah.
But for me, I looked at it in a couple different ways, or maybe a few, not a couple. But one, employers, as they're starting to make decisions about how to bring back people into the workforce,
Yeah.
they could be looking at this and saying, okay, is it too soon? Is it not soon enough? Are you starting to see a trend whether people are laid off or not laid off, where people are less anxious and and more want to come back into the workforce? Or from an employer only perspective, if you are concerned about your employees' mental health and stability,
Yeah.
because you're not in the office to walk by and say, hey, what's going on? Here's something that you can require them to fill out, once per day, many times per day. Because I know for me, where I was last Monday is not where I'm at today, and certainly not where I'm going to be at this Friday. So having different people use it at different times, you can actually see those trends and figure out, do I need to be talking to this employee because I can't see them based on what I'm hearing from this, and have a more connected conversation. And then for the third wheel is just people, normal people, like me at home with kids, trying to figure out what's going on. I know I have my own thoughts about what's going on. This allowed me to see what other people are seeing as well. And I'm not necessarily sharing their words as much as I'm sharing the sentiments behind those words.
Right.
And that should resonate as well.
So before we get into the, if people are interested in something like this, as far as the complexity, because I find it fascinating when you're building something like this, and how the platform, you're in V2 now, talking about the complexity. Obviously, you had a small group working on this, and were you able to do just hunker down, total focus? How did that work?
I love that reaction, Katie. I'll do 30 seconds and I'll let Katie pick up the rest. So my 30-second is this. So it was just Katie and I working on this. Granted, we know a few people that we could have doing testing with us, but
Sure.
we're doing this on nights and weekends because she has a full-time job. I have a full-time job.
Gotcha.
So I basically coded as much as possible. Katie also, we're iMessaging each other. We'll jump up and start to do some stuff. But that's it. It was just me and her, and then a few testers. Katie?
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's been fun developing this, and it's still. I mean, there's on the Power BI side and showing of the report and all of that. It's hopefully it's not in like production level, or I mean it's public and people can go take the survey, but it's not like what we would consider like the official published sort of production level, just because there's some resources that are still outside of our range in terms of like Power BI Premium and things like that. But yeah, no, I mean, I've been, just like Fabian had talked about, I've been mostly remote for years. I mean, from grad school because I was in grad school, but I taught online classes. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I even did a stem cell transplant from my hospital, being in the hospital teaching intro archaeology at Wichita State.
But with this solution, though, you're working nights, weekends, and you have other personal things going on. So, like, I know Fabian is fitting this in his family, and Katie, you're fitting this with
exactly. Let me do the setup. No, let me do the setup. Katie and I are working, and like you mentioned before, she does this clinical trial. There's on 2 occasions. One week we're doing a meeting with some Microsoft folks, and we're just demoing this to them. And she was in Hopkins that day. And another time, the first time, which totally took me off guard, is we're working on something, and I'm hearing doctors talking to her. I'm hearing beeping going off, and I'm saying, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yeah, it's just this. Keep going." that was really shocking. But
well, where were you?
No, I mean, I was sitting in treatment room at Johns Hopkins Hospital.
You're getting treated while you're working on the solution.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the reason of the other call that Fabian mentioned that with Microsoft folks, that was the day I got tested that Thursday. And then I had to come back the next day for treatment. so that shouldn't have happened. So I should have been home to be able to do that call.
That was
but
the original plan. That was the original plan. Yeah.
And
But I mean, from soup to nuts. So you're getting treated. You're with your family and your kids and putting puzzles together in between. So from the day you decided to start this project, doing this part-time, and you both fitting this in where you can and till this V2 piece that you just that you finished. What kind of time frame?
2.5 weeks.
So 2.5 weeks to build something leveraging Azure for the data storage, cognitive services, pump it out, give this rich view and Power BI, and allow slice and dicing.
Yep, and I would say that we could have gone out the door with V1. It just wouldn't have fit the standards that what Katie wanted to have from a visualization standpoint. From V1 to V2, it was more around the visualization than it was around the code, because the code was locked, except for a couple of things that we needed to do to get extra data. But it was more on the visualization side. So I would say halfway through it, code locked, solution done. And the other half is Katie really refining this and getting it into a place where she and I felt comfortable putting this out so people can actually use it.
So the big question, is going to be, as folks, they see something like this, if people are interested in learning more about it, connecting with the both of you, what should they be doing?
Definitely, connect with us on Twitter, which is @Fabian Williams, because I've been blogging. I've been blogging and tweeting about this. So the link for the survey and the link for the Power BI reports are going to be there. If they go to and I'll send you the links for this afterwards, but adotb.com, adotop.com, we have 4 blog posts that walk you through the vision and strategy, the end user experience, a technical walkthrough, and a wrap up. And it's very short blog post, but it has video of us going through in detail about what we did, so you can learn about it. But the hope is that you also take the survey and look at the reports and provide some feedback.
And Katie?
So I'm actually going to sort of I'm going to start blogging about sort of Power BI part. My personal website is katefromoz.com. I'm from Kansas, so not the other Oz. And then Twitter, it's Kate Coriell. And then also I post a lot on Instagram. So
Katie, you also have that thing that you published in some store, right? The Power BI thingy. You published that somewhere, like in a gallery.
Oh yeah, and then we did also Power BI community website. They have data stories gallery.
Oh,
and so the report is also there.
Nice. Okay, so I guess kind of to wrap this bit up is, it sounds like then in this case you guys spent this time, you solutioned out to meet a need, but it's stored now. This is more of a help others to help. Is this a community piece, not really product that people are going and buying? Right.
Exactly right. The entire idea, because you know that I'm a Microsoft MVP already, so a lot of what MVP do is centered around community activism. So that was a vision here. I explained that to Katie as well. This is not something we're going to be charging a fee for. This is something that we're going to put out there just to make people aware, but also serve a good purpose. In this we're living in right now.
So it's really helping to, like Katie was saying, you've done education stuff. This is really a show me how, teach me. Because I could see, just the fact that you're using the cognitive services, right, with soft responses and being able to then visualize that data. There's a million applications around that folks could benefit from. This just happens to be this instantiation, right?
One use case. Yeah, this is just one case of many.
Yeah, well, and it's also so much like, I think majority of us are cooped up in our houses and having cabin fever, and it's it took till it was the end of last week that I finally realized there's a difference between quarantine work and remote work.
Yeah.
And I moved, I went on vacation, and I came back March 1st to a different world. And other than I'm so thankful that Fabian reached out to me about this project, because I was like, mental health wise, I mean, I had no motivation, and I was not inspired for anything for like my own work. And
I think you're not alone in that.
no.
Yeah.
And so this helped like spark a lot for me also professionally, like in my big kid job. But it's the every day when I look at it, it does like, hopefully, like, I don't think it's not a crappy thing, and try not to cuss. I was raised by Navy people. So I'm a Navy brat. And so, but seeing that all these feelings that I have, it's pretty universal. Everyone's struggling. Everyone's having really rough days. Fabian and I are like really lucky that we have jobs right now. I know so many people that have been let go or furloughed. I mean, like, aeronautical engineers are being furloughed right now.
Yep.
And
True.
so you'd never think engineers. So it's just it's difficult. I know friends whose weddings have been now postponed, and other friends that are hoping to be able to have their wedding July 3rd.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if I look at what the two of you have done, and I think it's awesome because, you know, very different backgrounds, working remote in all this, two things. One, you've produced this great piece that people can take and use to start looking at, you know, how this could help them.
Mm-hmm.
They can give feedback into your project, but then they can also take those learnings and start to look at other applicability and leverage these kind of tools to accomplish that. And the second really is that, you know, apart from the tech, it's in times like these, it's finding something that, you know, we can have our daily job, or maybe we're not with one at the present, but if you communicate and start to work with other folks around something that has some purpose, right? A common purpose to deliver something, it provides some motivation, it provides a sense of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, number one, from a professional standpoint, you're helping others, and if you know, possibly helping others, but you can also use it as an opportunity to network, to get out there. And if you were unfortunate enough to be one of those folks who didn't, use that time to again work with others, network, push something out that others can benefit from, and then that can help you in the post-pandemic time frame, as far as, or even in, to maybe network and connect and start doing something.
Absolutely. Good way to summarize it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
This
Thank
has been
you.
awesome. So this is our inaugural social sessions. I hope that everybody who's watched this has learned something. We're very fortunate to have these two as our first speakers. So thank you, Katie. Thank you, Fabian. Stay tuned in the future. We're going to be cranking out. I actually have another recording I'm doing today, but we're going to be releasing one a week of these social sessions, and you're going to get to meet a whole host of very interesting folks like the ones we had today. Learn a little bit about them, learn a little bit about some tech that can benefit you, and get social. And with that, this is Mike.
Fabian.
Katie.
Bidding you have a great day, everybody. Take care, and as always, if I can find my record button to stop, take care and ciao. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.